How's it going? And welcome to the Guitar Effect. This evening we're going to be responding to a comment from Mr. Paul Amar about the Boss MS3 and how to use it in a dual amp setup. But before we do, I'll ask you to please like and subscribe. So, Mr. Paul Amar got on to me following the last Boss MS3 video I did, and he asked me to help him out with how to run the Boss MS3 in a dual amp setup. And what he asked me to do specifically was to help him out with 3 patches that he was trying to create, and they were both amps on, clean, with effects, so a Univibe is the specific effect he asked for. Then one amp on, dirty, no effects, and then both amps on, dirty and no effects. So how would you do that using the MS3 to control all that? So Paul, I've actually put quite a lot of effort into this because I think it could be useful not just to you but to a lot of users of the MS3. And as you mentioned, there's not many videos online that clearly illustrate how to do this, so I think this could be useful to a number of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the setup, I'm going to go through the wiring, I'm going to go through how you actually program it on the MS3. And then I actually went out to my studio at the weekend and shot a video of myself at my band's studio putting this into practice. And hopefully this will be pretty conclusive and will answer any questions you might have. So in order to do that, I'm going to bring up a diagram that I've done to show you, first of all, what the principle of the whole thing is and how you wire everything. Okay. So I have the diagram on my phone here in front of me, so if you see me repeatedly like fiddling with something off the screen, it's just my phone. Okay, so as you can see in the diagram here, I've illustrated everything as Paul has asked me to show how to connect. So Paul, you asked the question of how do I use 2 amps with the MS3, and Paul's 2 amps, as you can see, are both Mesa Boogie heads. One is a John Petrucci signature model, and the other one is a Mesa Boogie Mark V. And the way Paul is doing it at the moment is, I'm assuming, Paul, that you're running into the MS3 through the 3 effects loops, and then out of the MS3 into both amps inputs, and then he's using, I'm presuming, MIDI control on both amps to control channel switching, which also could theoretically mean that he's taking 2 effects loops from the MS3 and running 4 cables into both effects loops to make sure both effects are in the effects loops, which is just incredibly messy and a very hard way of doing things. Now, if you're already doing this way, which I don't think from what you said in your mail, I apologise, but I've just made this diagram. So as you can see, the first thing we're doing is we're plugging a guitar into the input of the MS3. That's illustrated with the yellow cable coming from the guitar. And then the next thing we're doing is we are plugging any gain-based effects that we might want to use, so overdrive or distortion, as many pedals as you want, into loop 2. I'll come back to loop 3 in a minute. Actually, no, I'll deal with loop 2 now. Okay, so the best way to do this is to treat the preamp of your main amp, which in this case I'm saying is the John Petrucci amp, as the main preamp of the entire rig. Okay, so what you do is you put the preamp, which is basically between the input and the effects end of the John Petrucci amp, into effects loop 2. And how you do that is basically take one cable from the effects end into the input of the amp, and then you take another cable from the effects return in loop 2 into the effects end of the amp, and that takes the preamp and puts it into an effects loop. And then we take any time-based effects you might want to use that are external. So, for example, I'm basing this on if John Petrucci was to do it, his TC Dreamscape pedal, and to put that after the preamp, as if you were plugging it into the effects loop of the amp, right? And then you can combine those 3 loops as you would do in a regular situation with any onboard effects that are on the preamp. Now, where this kind of really comes into its own in terms of streamlinedness, if you then take the left and right outputs, left being mono, which is important, goes into the John Petrucci amp, and right being stereo goes into the Mark 5, excuse me, Mark 5 amp, what you then get is you get just the John Petrucci preamp controlling both amplifiers. So you don't need to worry about channel switching on the Mark 5, you don't need to worry about the effects loop on the Mark 5, you don't need to worry about anything with the Mark 5 except it is what's called a slave, which is where it is taking the preamp and echoing it straight into the power amp of the Mark 5. So you get the same power amp, you only have to switch one amp on both sides. And this is the way most people that use a stereo setup that use amp switching do it. So once you've done that, the last thing you'll need to do is you'll need to control the amp switching. And I had a look at the back panel of the John Petrucci amp, and there doesn't seem to be any jack, relay switching. So it seems to be all MIDI. So then you just take a MIDI cable, which is the last thing I have here, plug a MIDI cable from the MS3, sorry, into the output of the MIDI. Sorry, I'm going to start again. We plug the MIDI cable from the output of the MS3 into the MIDI input. So MIDI output to MIDI input of the John Petrucci amp, as I'm sure you're doing already. And then all that happens is we control all our channel switching via the John Petrucci amp. And everything that's in the left channel goes into that. And then everything that's in the right channel goes via the John Petrucci preamp into the Mark 5 as a slave, right side power amp. So what you have is the same preamp in both amps and all your effects are in stereo. This is the way that to be fair, like most heavy rock or 80s players did things with rack setups. You'd use one preamp and then split it off into a dual power amp, which is effectively what you're doing. And I have tried this out at the studio with my own rig. And while my slave amp didn't have a effects loop and I had to go into the input, which did affect the tone somewhat, it worked perfectly. So I will put this diagram for anybody that wants to see how to do this rig into the link in the description. You can just download it from my Google Drive for free. And I think it's a really good way because it only uses 4 cables coming from the MS3. Well, 5 if you count the MIDI cable. Whereas if you were to use both amps independently on either side, you'd have to channel switch them both, you'd have to effects loop them both, and you'd have to input into the output from the MS3 into the input. So you'd be using like 8 or 9 cables or something, and it'd be an awful mess. This is a much more streamlined, clever way of doing it, I think. So, like I said, the diagram is there. I've explained the diagram and talked through it. So the next thing I'm going to do is get the actual MS3 and show you how you control per patch switching on either the left or right output. And also there's certain effects, mainly just the delay, and I'm just going to demonstrate delay. There's one delay called dual LR or stereo, where it allows you to blend the delay to either side. So you can set the mix on a dual delay at 100% on one side and 0% on the other. It's only going to come out of one amp, which I think is really useful. It's basically wet dry. Well, it's a sort of wet dry. Some people would say it's not wet dry, and they'd probably be right because I'm not going to get into that. But it's basically allowing you to have delay on one side and not on the other, which is a really useful sound. So I'm going to show you how to do all that in a close-up on the MS3 about how I program it. And then, like I said, I'll show the footage from when I went to the studio and show you how the whole thing is in action. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so apologies for the possibly hard to see display here, but this is it's unbelievable how hard it is to capture this display of the MS3 in a camera of any kind. So I'll do my best now to try and talk you through how to set this up. Okay, so assuming you followed the diagram that I have made and shows you, okay, and you've got all your wiring done correctly, this is the 3 patches: clean, heavy, and I'm just going to call it lead. Right, so this is the one where it's both amps with effects on. This is the one where it's just the master amp, so the JP amp with no effects at all. And here is the second one, both amps with no effects at all. Just check that. I do have a reverb on the second one. Okay, so on the first one we have a reverb and delay, and the key thing is here, you can see here it says ST. That means stereo, which means both outputs are on. Okay, so what you do to achieve that is you go edit, and then you roll along to the output section here. You go enter, and you simply move it So you can see you have L, or Eleanor, stereo, and that's it. If you want just the master amp, it's L. If you want just the slave amp, it's OR. If you want both amps, it's L and OR. If you want both amps to run in stereo, it's stereo. We want it to run in stereo because we're using some stereo effects, so we leave it on stereo. And then you just, you write, and then that patch is saved as having stereo output, okay? Go to the second one. This time you only want the left amp on. As you can see, it says L at the moment, but you go, again, edit, roll across to output, okay? Enter, and then you will change this to stereo or Eleanor, and then you will go right, okay? And then on the last one, it's the same, but if you wanted, you could go do the same process, edit, scroll along to output, enter, and it's on stereo, so I just go right. And now you can see as I switch between them, clean is stereo, heavy, clean is stereo, heavy should be just L. So edit, go along, so it's correcting my own mistakes, along to output, enter, change it back to just L, my bad, right, edit, and then you have clean is stereo, heavy is just L, and lead is back to stereo. So you can see now that I've done it in such a way where it's got the amp selection that you want, okay? Now the key thing is, I'm not going to show you how to program MIDI. There's plenty of videos out there to show you how to program MIDI, but all you have to worry about here in terms of making sure you're on the right channel and stuff is select what MIDI PC change you want to send to the JP head, about whether it's on the clean channel, on the dirty channel, or whichever of the 75,000 channels that both of those Mezzo Boogie amps have. So clean, dirty, or some sort of lead channel. I'm not a Mezzo Boogie kind of guy. They're too complicated for me. So, but you will send a MIDI command, and it will affect the preamp on the JP1 or whatever it's called, the jumper 2-3 amp, and that will then, that preamp, because it's in loop 2, will then come on the slave as well. Okay, so that's basically how you do the amp switching. I'm also going to show you how you set up a delay on the clean or any of these that can work on either left or right or both. So if I go into edit, okay, and scroll to delay, and then hit enter, you will see here that it says dual LR. Okay, so how you would select that particular one, I'm sure you know this already, but I'm just going to try to be thorough. You go to the third knob when you're in the signal chain, and the third knob, as you can see here, says type, and that will sweep you through the different types of delay that you have available. So we want dual LR, okay, and then we go enter, and as you can see, I'm just going to make sure I'm on the first page. Yeah, you have BPM, you have one feedback and one level, and then if I go on the next page, you've got 2 time, and you've got 2 feedback and 2 level, and then you've got 1 high cut, 2 high cut, and direct level. Okay, obviously that's kind of is what you expect, right? So this is delay 1, and it's on the left. This is delay 2, and it's on the right. And this is a high cut for 1 and a high cut for 2. So that you can see even I've got them affected differently, so that there's no high cut on the right side, but there is a bit of high cut on the left side. So the high cut, in this case, if it was your rig, the Mark V would have a brighter delay than on the JP amp, which would result in a different texture coming from both amps, and I have them set to different time. So as you'll see in the video, it's going to bounce between both amps, which is a really cool effect. Now don't worry, or don't forget, I should say, that you could also go back here and go on the effect level on the left, 0, and now you'll only have delay repeats coming out of the Mark V. That's really hard to remember. It's not my setup. So I hope that's clear. It's really useful. And then the Univibe or the any of the other effects that you want to do. This is the only one that I have seen so far that you can split between left and right. I don't know about the stereo effects in this unit yet, because I don't really use it like that. But yeah, that's how you separate delays between each channel. So I'm going to go into this video from the studio now and show you how this works in practice. So as you can see, I have the DT25 and the Bass Breaker 1830 here. And so what I'm going to do is go through the 3 patches that you asked to me to set up for you. I've gone through the diagram and how I set them up already, so this is just demoing what they sound like and to show you how they sound. I'm capturing the mic, and both amps have emulated outputs going, so I don't have mics in them, but they're both being captured individually, and I'll pan them higher right and left so you can see when one is on and off. So the first patch is the clean patch, and that sounds like this. It's worth noting that because I don't have an effects loop on the Bass Breaker 30, the preamp out of the Line 6 DT25, which is acting as a master, and the DT or the Bass Breaker is acting as a slave. Okay, I have to go into the input of the Bass Breaker, which means I'm getting the preamp of the DT25 being preamped again by the Fender. It's not what you'd ideally do, but in your situation with the 2 Boogie amps, this won't be a problem. Just make sure instead of plugging into the input of the slave amp, you plug into the effects return slave amp, and you'll get the same preamp from your master amp coming out both channels, right? So here is the clean sound. Now, if I chuck there, you can see I have a different delay coming out of both amps. I'm doing this all in kind of juxtaposed order, so I'll either have already shown you how to do that, or I will show you how to do that. But that's just to show you that both amps are definitely on. Okay? So, and then obviously you wanted a uni vibe, so. Okay, that kind of goes through what you wanted the clean channel to do. So both amps are on and the effects are coming out of both amps, okay? Okay, so I've gone over to the second patch now, and here we have just the DT25 on at your request, right? So you want to keep it to just one amp for your verse part. And there are literally no effects. So I have reverb off the MS3. Incidentally, there is reverb on the DT25, so you could use it if you wanted and foot switch it with the extra foot switch jack on the TRS coming out of the MS3. But if you're using the MS3, it's just best to keep everything on the MS3. It gives you the maximum control. So here is just the DT25 JCM 810. Okay, and then for the last sound, I go on to patch 3, and it's the same thing, except now we've turned the Bass Breaker on as well. It sounds like this. So, just to give you an idea of how you could use all 3 sounds, you could, for the intro part of some song, maybe I'm just going to use the Soundgarden song as an example. Right, you could use that for the intro. Yeah. It's cool being out here because I can be insanely loud. So that just shows you the 3 sounds you wanted to do. So just to go through them again. Clean with a dual delay on, and if you want a univibe. Just the master amp, so the channel switching preamp amp, which in this case is the DT25. Okay. And lastly, just full tilt, both amps, JCM 800. Okay, I'm just making up some nonsense on the spot there. So I hope that has demonstrated the sounds for you. Okay. I hope that was beneficial. Like I said, the diagram is downloadable from the description in this video. And you can reference that at any time just to figure out how to run this setup. And yeah, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment if there's anything else you'd like to know about with the MS3. I've got a pretty good idea of how to get around it and stuff now, so I'd be happy to help anybody out with anything else. Please like and subscribe, as I said, and thanks for watching, I guess, and I'll see you soon. You've been watching The Guitar Effect. Thanks. See you later.